Welcome, everyone. We're happy to have Erik-Jan Linden with us today. Welcome, Erik-Jan.
Thank you, Daniel. Great to be here.
In today's Mindsy webinar, we're going to talk about the past, the present, and the future of process mining. We'll look at the business value of process mining, how to implement it, and where to integrate it with other technologies. At the end of the webinar, we'll save some time to answer questions. So please type your questions in the Q&A section, and we will get to as many of those as possible. Erik-Jan, you are on the advisory board of Mindsy, and you're the founder and former CEO of one of the most prominent process mining companies, Process Gold. Process Gold was acquired by a RPA vendor in UiPath in 2019, right?
That's right. And well, since then, process mining companies seem to be acquired by the dozens by large IT firms like SAP and IBM. But Process Gold was definitely one of the first to be acquired.
I understand how that goes. I've been involved with a number of those acquisitions over the last few years. So what do you think started the huge interest from big international IT firms in process mining?
Well, the first thing that was necessary was that process mining had to mature. So it was invented around the turn of the century. And then it took some 15 years for it to become ready for the enterprise level. That was about 2015. However, what was also very important was a market report by Gartner on process mining in 2018. So Gartner was one of the first analysts to recognize that process mining was something any company should use. I mean, there are other analysts now that are publicizing about process mining. See, for instance, the recent Peak Matrix Group publication, which also featured Mindsy. But 2018 was a very important year for process mining. Interest in process mining really boomed, and soon after that, the acquisition took place.
And then you used your free time to write your 2021 book on process mining.
Yeah, that's right. You know, at the time there were a lot of books and articles on process mining, but these were mainly for a technical audience. You know, they were out about the technology as such, and mainly written for those with a technical interest, you know, scientists and developers. And, you know, of course, process mining is an analysis technique, right? So I guess our audience today is acquainted with process mining, but for those that aren't, what it does is it uses data from any system and then transforms it to a visual representation of your business workflow, the one you see on the right here. However, process mining is much more. So when these visualizations are used in the right way, they provide enormous business value. So what I thought was missing at the time was a book on how to implement process mining, how to ensure it really helps improve processes, because that's what process mining is about, or at least should be about. So I started putting together all the lessons that we'd learned since we started with process mining around 2006.
Wow, 2006?
Yeah. So the data analytics company MagnaView that I had founded in 2004 was based in Eindhoven, the Netherlands, and that happens to be the birthplace of process mining. You know, when you're in Eindhoven, you can't miss it. And I immediately saw the great potential of process mining, but I also saw that two things were definitely missing. So firstly, a process graph as such is not enough to get a real insight in what a process is about. You need much more. You need to interact with it. You need to be able to select, to filter, to zoom, and you also need a full array of business graphics, also interactive, to make process information really impact the process issues that you have, for instance, on working capital. And around 2006, process mining and visual analytics were two separate worlds, and we did quite some work to bring these together. And secondly, at the time, process mining was mainly available on standalone PCs for single users, but that's not enough if you have to make it work for large enterprises. There you need real large web-based enterprise systems for many users that are stable, that are performant, that scale. You need security up to enterprise standards, and also you need to connectivity to the systems. As you can see in the sheet here, where you can actually find the data necessary for process mining. And the important thing lies in the combination of these two. So you need enterprise systems with rich interfaces to make sure that process mining gets in the hands of all people that actually take decisions about these business processes. And these are the business people and their managers. I mean, they need fast and easy access to information and the best possible user experience. The future of technology in general is driven by the ability to enable more people to leverage it. And this equally applies to process mining.
That makes sense. So you saw the potential of process mining and how it could improve business processes. What's your experience here? Does process mining really result in tangible business value?
Yeah, I wouldn't be sitting here if that were not the case. And I think that there are two things to say about this. So the first thing is that what you can do is to compare process mining to other analytics technologies. And the interesting thing is that if you look at process mining, if you look at these process graphs, then what business people see there is really their process. They see the activities that they carry out. They see the order of the activities they carry out. And that's what makes, in general, these process graphs so enormously powerful. But, let me give you some concrete examples of cases I've been involved in that really showed the enormous potential of process mining. So a colleague of mine was working in a bank, and they were looking at a mortgage application process. And the funny thing was that many of these applications did not result in an actual mortgage. And when they started to analyze the process, they saw that many people entered the process, but not with the intent to buy a house. But the question about that was only asked at the end of the application process. So by simply moving that process step, that question to an earlier stage in the process, a lot of unnecessary work was prevented. And another case was a large telecom company where the idea was to improve a broad array of processes. So they had RPA, robotic process automation, in place, and they wanted to identify the best use cases for RPA in order to generate a good return on investment. And it was decided to start with one first and very simple process. And what actually happened was that after 3 months, the ROI on the analysis of this first process was already so huge that they had earned back the total investment that they had done on the investment for process mining, which was done to work on all processes in the company. So and I can give countless more examples of this. Yes, there is enormous business value in process mining.
Wow, those are really impressive. So with all of that ROI available, where could or should enterprises start with process mining?
Well, okay, let's start with the one. I think there are 3 things that are important to keep in mind. Firstly, if you want to start with process mining, you need to have a willingness to change. So process mining results in so many aspects of processes, business processes, that can be improved and that can be altered, that the people in the organization need to be ready for that. We were once asked by a potential customer to organize a reference visit. And when this potential customer came back from this reference visit, we asked them, what was the most important thing you learned? And they said, well, we're convinced of the potential of process mining, but we're not yet ready to actually implement all the changes that come out. So what they then did was to firstly work on that capacity, and then they implemented process mining. Secondly, and this may seem trivial, but you do need data, and there are tons of data in systems nowadays, but sometimes the real crucial process steps are not recorded or are, for instance, hidden in documents. On the other hand, this should not keep you from starting with process mining, but we'll talk about that later on. And then thirdly, the third important thing to realize is that the real sweet spot of process mining is variation. When there is variation in processes, start with process mining. Let me give you an example here. We once had a car manufacturing company that gave us data about its production line and asked us to analyze that data. But the point is that in car manufacturing, you don't see a lot of variation. It's straight through processing. And sometimes later on in the process, you will see that the steering wheel was not put in the right car, but then you change that in that specific location in the production process. So these type of processes are less suitable for process mining. The place where you will find a lot of variation is where organizations interact with the outside world, with customers and with vendors. It is easier to tell your own employees and the people that are working in your organization to stick to a specific way to carry out their daily work, but you have less control of your customers. You can't, for instance, tell your customer that there is just one way to file a complaint. You will offer them the possibility to do that by email, to do that by WhatsApp, or whatever means you would want to put in place. And that's where the variation comes about. And some of this variation is unwanted and is something that you want to get rid of.
Yeah, let's hope that the car manufacturer built my car in a really straightforward and easy path. So it's a lot of companies, whether they're public, private, small, large, meet those criteria, right? How do they start?
Well, even though it's very powerful, process mining is not yet household. So what you need to do is to educate colleagues, management, sometimes even up to the C-level, that it results in business value. Although we see that is rapidly changing. Now, in order to demonstrate that, a couple of suggestions. So my first suggestion would be to look at real strategic issues in the company. If a company is losing 1% of its customers every month due to issues with delivery, then that is something that is really causing headaches, and that is up to the C-level. And that's something which is important to look at. Secondly, these strategic problems should be process problems. Process mining will not change the culture of your company, for example. You need to have at least a feeling that these problems are caused by processes that are carried out in the wrong way. And what's also important is that my advice would be to start with something which I would call a proof of value, not a proof of concept. A proof of concept with process mining is fairly easy. You take a data set, you feed it into an application, a solution like Minzy, and you get your process graph. And nowadays, that's an hour's work, half a day, at most a day or something like that. So that's not really the interesting part. The interesting part is to find out whether process mining really demonstrates business value for your organization. And most importantly, this involves this means involving business people. And why business people? Well, firstly, because they often know where the problems are or where the problems might be. So in an analysis, you can start to look where they think the problems are. And secondly, once you've done an analysis and you have the results, they can help interpret these results. So, I've seen too many process mining projects that were an IT fest, where IT only was involved. But it's very, very important to involve in a process mining proof of value the business and business people as soon as possible. Besides that, and I think I mentioned that already, companies should really start small and grow into process mining. So focus on a specific business problem and then grow from there. Don't eat the elephant in one bite. And if you've taken a bite of the elephant, then make sure that that you've chewed it thoroughly and swallowed it before going to the next one. So understanding what problem you want to solve also helps identify what data is needed to begin. And in most cases, you don't need to connect every system in your environment to get a picture. You need to get started. That often you see that, hey, we first need to know and to gather and all the data in the company that might be responsible, might be say something about a certain process. Start small and then build that up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always tell people when I'm working on process mining projects, we need access to 3 people. We need somebody who understands the process. We need an executive that has objectives that they want to accomplish. And then we need to have somebody that understands where the data is located.
That's exactly, that's the team you need. Completely agree.
So we're getting close to time here. One last question. So for the future, you already mentioned integration of process mining with data and analytics. What else do you foresee for the future?
Well, of course, there's a lot going on AI, robotics, robotic process automation, and the integration of such technologies with process mining. However, no matter the level of automation and no matter the level of AI that you have in your organization, it is the combination of technology and people that works. The combination with real intelligence that works. If you have carried out a process analysis and the outcome is fire Erik-Jan van der Linden, then it's still a human being that needs to actually fire Erik-Jan van der Linden. That's not going to happen just by itself. And this is also one of the interesting things and also one of the reasons why I decided to join the advisory board of Mincy, because this is exactly what Mincy tries to do. It tries to make sure that the information that is needed to improve processes gets to the people that take decisions, and that they can do so fast and easy. And to do that, you need to invest in user experience. So no matter the bots and the AIs we have, user experience is crucial to get to business value. And that's, I think, one of the important things that we have to look on in the near and further future.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Erik-Jan. That's been some really great insights from your distinguished background in process mining. We have a number of questions here from the audience. Let's see if we can take a couple of them. First, what type of processes do you typically see process mining to be a good fit for?
So, as I mentioned, these are typically processes where you have a lot of variation, and typically you see these type of processes in places where companies connect with the outside world. So that might be purchasing, that might be selling, that might be customer interaction, that might be sales. So any place where a company interacts with people on the outside, where they buy some things from, or where they sell things to. These are the main areas where a lot of variation exists. This does not mean that processes that are say, purely internal, cannot be full of unwanted variation and cannot be full of things that need to be changed in the processes. But in particular, if you want to start with a process mining effort in your company, I would try to look at the places where you would find most variation.
So order to cash, procure to pay, lead to order, all involve outside customers or suppliers.
So with what I'm looking at the Q&A, and there was one question about yes, order to cash absolutely is definitely an area where process mining can be applied right away.
Awesome. So a couple of interesting ones. So if we're going to start, what is the minimum data that we need to make process mining work?
The minimum data that you need is data which consists of data which concerns a specific process. You need data about the process steps in this process, and the steps in this process need to have a date and timestamp. That's all the data that you need. So these are fairly simple data sets. Once you have these, you can add any type of data that would be of interest. But using these very simple data sets can already reveal many aspects, a lot of information about the processes at hand. And after that, the sky is the limit. So you can add any information with respect to specific users that are carrying out information, the departments they work in, the customer in question, the vendor in question, the vendor type, the amounts in the orders, the amounts in the purchases, so that a lot of information can be added there. And again, what you see nowadays is that process mining platforms, process mining solutions, including Mincy, can very easily digest that type of data and can very easily go about the data and come up with good first analysis.
Awesome. So, I think in our experience, we've seen that the largest companies have taken on process mining over the last few years. At least that's where it started. What challenges do you see for a small or mid-sized company taking on process mining?
In a small and mid-sized company, what you will often see is that process mining efforts start with a somewhat smaller team. So what you will often see is that it is, say, one person or two persons that are actually starting to get involved in process mining, and so these smaller teams will maybe need to invest some more time to actually make sure that they get the team to meet all the conditions, or the effort to meet the conditions that are necessary. But on the other hand, I think that's also an opportunity for smaller companies, because they can more easily get a process mining effort off the ground. It depends a bit, of course, on the decision processes in the organization. Within larger companies, larger enterprises, it may take months, if not years, to start process mining actions. Whereas in a smaller company, you could get it off the ground in 1 week, 1 month. It's fairly easy. So instead of looking at the challenges, I think I would rather look at the opportunities that exist for smaller companies.
Absolutely. It's typically a lot easier to get approval in smaller companies. And I'll add one other thing that you might want to look at. You might look at a process mining vendor that is really focused on helping you get up and running and holding your hand through the process, since you don't have a whole team of process mining experts to get that done.
I absolutely agree. In particular, in the beginning, when you're not fully acquainted with the technology, and with the way process mining works or should be implemented, that's absolutely a requirement to look for a vendor that can really help you that way. Absolutely.
Well, we have a few more questions here, but we'll try to answer those offline. So Erik-Jan, I really appreciate your time. And for everybody else, join us next week where we'll have another process mining session, and we'll keep going from there.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks everybody that attended. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a good day.